like to introduce you yet again to my favourite person, Lady Colin Campbell, who is going to give us plenty of ammunition in our bedtime stories. And I wanted to say, well, life couldn't get any better, could it? I mean, Harry is the gift that never stops giving. He carries on. But let's go back to the coronation. The coronation was a huge success, would you not say, even though our king is woke?
It was a surprisingly well-received event, and I think it was rather more of a success than I feared it would be. I thought it was going to be a little bit problematic. In fact, all the things that I disagreed with, for instance, the attire,
yes,
ultimately didn't it didn't dent the success to the extent that I feared it would. I thought it, by and large, was a great success. It was majestic,
the music was great.
Not appropriate in certain quarters, but in other quarters desirable.
Yes, and also it brought in a modern element, which was sort of it's a bit groovy, isn't it? I mean, he was trying to be a bit groovy.
Yeah, but I have to say I didn't like the white outfits.
The ball that was at the palace, because of course he had got rid of all the dukes.
Yes.
Yes, which was a great pity because the dukes represent us.
Well, that's what they're supposed to do.
Yes.
And I mean, there was the Duke of Argyll, who is my nephew by marriage, but he was in because he is the hereditary master of the royal household in Scotland. He wasn't in because he's a duke. I forget which other dukes there
Duke
were.
of Norfolk, of course.
Duke of Norfolk, of course. He was there because he's the Earl Marshal. The Duke of Buccleuch was supposed to be there and wasn't. And the Duke of Westminster was there because he's a great friend. But the rest of the dukes weren't there. And of course, David Granby, sorry. I call him David Granby, the Duke of Rutland.
Yes.
He's the grandson of Margaret Argyll, who was my stepmother-in-law.
Yes.
And he was really furious about the fact that they hadn't been asked and said it, which I thought was a little bit inelegant, let's put it that way. With all the splendor, all the wonderful, or they could have done another alternative. Instead of totally marginalizing the aristocracy the way the king did, giving the message that the hereditary element is no longer valid, which then begs the question, then how come you're king? And which was, I think, but he could have had representatives of each of the ranks of the aristocracy. Nobody had on any of those robes. The royals had on their garter robes, so it looked good. I mean, I thought it worked as an update, but it could have worked better.
It didn't look like a whole lot of Freemasons sort of gathering.
No, but it did
look...
But
of course they were, probably.
It also looked like a rather unfashionable wedding.
You know, we should explain that for Americans, open-toed sandals are a big no-no, really, on occasions like this.
Well, I mean, the beauty of the traditional coronation was that everybody was in white.
But I had never realised how small Westminster Abbey is. It's not actually huge, is it? It looks huge from the outside, majestic, but we were there yesterday, and it actually is not that big.
No, it's relatively small. For the
Very intimate.
For the Queen's coronation, they shut it for a year to build the stands for 8,000. There is the public misnomer that the reason why the king couldn't have the coronation with the numbers that the Queen had was because of fire regs. Fire regs are suspended for all church services. It worked. I mean, I thought it worked.
I think it worked. And I don't think, do you think it was deliberate that Anne hid with her plume? Dear Harry.
Oh, I'm sure these accidents are always on purpose.
They're fabulous
You
accidents.
know, the candle in the wind in the Abbey, and now the plume.
Yes, exactly.
You know, very funny. I loved it.
I loved it. And who did you think looked the best? I thought Charlotte, because I thought she looked so elegant. She was beautifully dressed, and she looked fantastic.
Charlotte, the nice
the little
one. And
Yes.
yes, she was lovely.
Well,
She
I
was
prefer the
absolutely-
children. The children were
Yeah.
hilarious, you know.
Oh, and they're so well behaved.
Yes, really.
really
and
well behaved.
they're being well brought up for the future.
Yes, yes.
But what are we going to do with two woke kings? Because we're going to have this for at least the next 60 years. And are you keen on wokery?
I am keen on positive progress, and I am keen on change that is life-enhancing and desirable. And any student of history will know that too much change destabilizes, too rapid change is destructive. All the great revolutions of history have started as a result of change, political change from the top.
What do you think his legacy will be?
I certainly agree with him on architecture. I do not 100% agree with him on agricultural methods. We need food, and we need cheap food. And I'm afraid you can't get cheap food with organic farming. It doesn't work.
Don't you think Camilla's come a long way? I mean, she's now the Queen of England.
I think it's fabulous.
It's
I've
fantastic.
always said it all along.
Yes, I mean, there she is. If you'd asked sort of 30 years ago, will she ever be Queen? Everybody would have said no. She is every girl's dream, really.
But I have always said she should be Queen.
Why do you feel this?
I felt she should be Queen because I knew Diana. I wrote
About Diana.
the first biography that was realistic about Diana and Charles and their relationships. And I wrote the posthumous biography that People magazine said was the most believable of all the Diana biographies. And I knew how the marriage unraveled and why it unraveled. And I had a great deal of sympathy for Charles. And I had a great deal of compassion for Diana. But Diana was a very deeply damaged person as a result of her parents' divorce. And she was not capable of a constructive, viable marriage with anybody as a result of the emotional damage that had been done to her when she was a little girl. And she had thrown her daughter to the wolves so that her grandchildren would remain in the royal circle, and she had betrayed her daughter. And Francis, and so there was all of this murky, nasty, emotional stuff going on in Diana's birth families. I had compassion for Charles, and I also knew an awful lot about Camilla's marriage and naughty Andrew Parker Bowles.
Of course.
Such a swordsman who couldn't keep his sword sheathed. But my God, what a swathe he cut through womanhood.
But of course, she stayed very good friends with him, and actually they
Yes.
worked very well as a sort of a ménage à trois.
Well, they work well as a newly configured
Family.
Yes.
The modern family, in
The
fact.
modern family unit.
You know, you have to keep
And-
everybody happy.
Camilla was desperately in love with Andrew Parker Bowles, who was having an affair with Princess Anne, and she wanted to land Andrew, and so she thought, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and she knew the best way to jerk his chain was to have an affair with Charles, and it worked. And she married Andrew as a result of her machinations. And
So she's a bit Machiavellian in a charming way.
well, I mean, any girl in that situation would. It's not being Machiavellian, it's being sensible. It's playing your cards correctly.
Yes.
You know, I mean.
So she was good at the game.
Yeah.
She's good at chess.
Yeah, I don't think she's Machiavellian. I think she is sensible. And, you know, if you're stuck in an undesirable situation and you see your way out, I don't think it's, you know, she wasn't trying to deceive anybody. She was just trying to achieve what she wanted and achieved it. But then, having landed him, you know, he was not the most faithful of husbands, to put it mildly. And
but Anne never married him anyway.
Anne couldn't marry him.
Oh.
Anne couldn't marry him because he was a Roman Catholic. So Anne couldn't marry him under the Royal Marriages Act and the Act of Settlement, etc., etc. She was not allowed to marry him. And everybody knew that. But she's remained great friends with him. And his father, Derek, was a great, great friend of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and used to go racing with her. And so, you know, I think that Camilla deserves to be queen. She and Charles have had what has turned out to be a true love affair. They did not start out as the true love affair that people would like to make it out to be now. But they comforted each other and they liked each other and they loved each other as people. And
also, they were more sexually aware than they are now. I mean, we've become almost puritanical.
We have
and
become.
It's shown in every state that we're very puritanical. And it's quite shocking because when I was a little girl, everybody was having affairs with everybody else. Now, no.
We live in a neo-puritanical age. I've been saying it for ages, and we do. And neo-puritanism is a disaster. And it's what some people would call wokery, but it's not wokery. It's neo-puritanism.
Which is what I was feeling. I thought we got rid of our Puritans to America, but no, boy, are they coming back to roost here. And look what happened to, you know, our balcony isn't black enough, you know, at the Coronation. That's a difference.
That woman said the balcony was too white. Well, excuse me, I don't recall any white person having the unmitigated gall at the coronation of the King of Eswatini, Swaziland as was, saying, oh, you know, that balcony's too black.
But I was also interested in Harry today. I mean, I know that's going to date it, but Harry today is going to court, is he?
Don't say today. Let's
discuss Harry and court. Has he got an obsession with being on trial?
Well, Harry, of course, has never been in a witness box until he stepped into the witness box in the Strand. He has got an education that was a long time a-coming, which is that opposing counsel is not going to treat you the way a journalist who needs to befriend you and needs your approval to air the program is going to treat you. I mean, look at the way Harry recoiled when Tom Bradby had the unmitigated gall to point out to him that he and Meghan had been promoting the notion that the royals were racist. And no, I never said that. I mean, well, that has not worked in the witness box. And that was never going to work in the witness box. So Harry has learnt a lesson. He, unfortunately, has married somebody who fancies herself a top-shot lawyer. Remember, he married Rachel Zane, also known as Rachel Meghan Markle. I'm a star of Suits. I'm a Rachel Zane. Slap him once, slap him twice, slap him again. You know, and I'm just going to show everybody. And with her, it worked for a while when she and Harry enjoyed the patina of royalty. And the judges therefore thought, oh, well, they're royal, you know, they wouldn't lie, which is, of course, why Mr. Justice Warby fell for all the lies that Meghan spouted in the Associated Newspapers action. And I don't think he would have fallen for it now, but he fell for it then. But Meghan and Harry have, in the interim, so exposed themselves as being opportunists who have no regard for fact or anything but their own worldly interests, that he is not a credible witness, she's not a credible witness. And I think you're going to discover as all these lawsuits unfold that they are on losing wickets, not winning wickets. But let's wait and see how everything unfolds. But he's certainly not been given an easy ride in the court.
He will not be, no, because
He won't
I wouldn't want to be on the other side, I can tell you.
No, you can't say that because you're dating it.
What do you make of Harry saying that the Mirror group were ruining his time at Eton and by hacking his telephones?
First of all, we are a society that is governed by law, and most of his claims are out of time. That's the first thing. You know, there are statutes of limitations which apply in a society for a good reason. And Harry has an overarching agenda, which is to muzzle the press so that anything that he doesn't agree with, they are restricted from saying. This is not a popular view with his father or his brother. Both his father and his brother tried to prevent him from issuing the proceedings that he, under Meghan's ministrations, because remember he's married to Rachel Zane, slap him once, slap him twice, slap him again. And you know, I'm just going to show you who's the big boss. We have a royal family which is supposed to embody the values of our society. Those values include appreciation of a free press. And any public figure or member of a royal family who tries to take on the press the way Harry has done, saying it is his life's work to discipline them because he didn't like things they did to him. This is a very dangerous, quixotic territory for him to have strayed into, and nobody in his family approves of it. That's number one. Number two, Harry's grouses against the Mirror and against all the other newspapers are often unprovable. Harry has decided that any article that the Mirror wrote was as a result of hacking. Their defense was that of the 33 articles in the newspapers, some of them came from him, some came from Buckingham Palace, some came from their royal sources, some came from other publications, for instance, the News of the World or the Telegraph, all of this has been a matter of evidence. And they made one admission of an illegality, which was not brought up in this particular case that Harry was banging on about. And Harry does not seem to understand that 30 years ago, most people's mobile phones, because mobile phones were relatively new, most people didn't change their PIN. I knew your phone number. I could use my phone to access your messages.
Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You can still do it. I don't know if you can still do it, but definitely you could do it 6 years ago, 5 years ago.
Well, but the thing is, that's the point. It's been prevalent but now, presumably now you'd need
the PIN number.
But in those days, most people didn't change their PIN number. And why does Harry's hypothesis was based upon a fallacy, which is that anything that he didn't like that the Mirror said, and may I point out that I have no axe to grind for the Mirror. Harry has just assumed, his hypothesis has been, if I didn't like it, if it didn't come from me, it meant my phones were hacked. Harry has simply hypothesized that anything he didn't like that the Mirror said came from them hacking his phone. But they didn't need to hack his phone. The servants could have hacked his phone. His friends could have hacked his phone. You can't believe a word that emanates from their quarter because they are so Machiavellian. And he's now almost as Machiavellian as she is. And you can't believe a word that they say. If you consider the personalities involved, I suppose it was never going to be all sweetness and light. Meghan Markle is a deeply miserable, very unpleasant, moaning, groaning, whining, self-adoring, entitled, spoilt brat with an ego far bigger than her abilities and greed that would make a glutton, but greed for money and fame and position and status and approbation that would make a glutton burst. And Harry is unstable, and I think she's not too stable either, but she's more stable than he is. She has fewer emotions than he does. And that gives her a degree of stability that he, who is a total emotional mess, lacks. But he's not stable, and he has always been a nightmare, and always self-important, always extremely aggressive. But they are both two very aggressive people who have joined forces to fight the world. And so, of course, the marriage is, no matter what, always going to be volatile. There are always going to be issues. There's always going to be too much drama. But you know, does this mean that they are going to get a divorce? He loves those children. He is the one who wanted to be married and have children. His ambition was to marry a girl, and he and William and Catherine would be a happy foursome. Well, of course, it didn't work out like that, because he married somebody who can't stand being anything but number one. And so there was no prospect of that. And also she's so vulgar and pushy and trésarriviste and elbows everywhere, you know, and abrasive and hectoring and tiresome and just ill-bred.
Boastful.
Really. Boastful to the nth degree, and really very tiresome. But he himself is no oil painting in terms of character. You know, he's always been extremely aggressive, extremely volatile.
Do you think there's any repairing in this area? Do you think they can repair it?
No.
Like in interviewing, meeting Mr. Markle. There's rumour. Isn't there rumour?
Of course, I know the Markles.
Yes.
I'm in touch with the Markles, and I like the Markles. And I think Mr. Markle is King Lear, and Meghan is Goneril and Regan combined, and she's Gonorrhean. And if it sounds like a very nasty disease, there's a good reason why it sounds like a very nasty disease, because certainly where her treatment of her father is concerned, she has been poisonous and she has broken his heart. Will there be a rapprochement? I can tell you she has broken his heart, but he's not stupid. He's not out to lunch. She wants to make up with her father, which is a way of knocking the disastrous antics of that car chase. Remember the car chase?
Oh, yes, we haven't talked about the car chase.
Oh, well, I went to school in New York. I lived in New York on and off for 7 years. And I can tell you, on a daily basis, you know, you couldn't cross a street or an avenue because all the cars were beetling down at 80 miles an hour. Oh, you know, you would have thought that it was a race course. I mean, everybody knows New York has no traffic. There's never gridlock in New York. It's all a fantasy that all of us who've lived in New York have been deluding ourselves with, that it takes 2 hours to drive 30 blocks. I mean, no. Harry and Meghan had this 2-hour car chase, 80 miles an hour. I mean, are they mad, or they have to be mad, because they cannot have expected us to believe such rubbish. I mean, it's stupidity of the highest order. Oh, dreadful.
It's so dreadful, and there's no way out. You know, I don't like to be cornered, and I don't know how they can stand it. They're about to be cornered into a tiny, tiny square box.
Yes.
And I don't like that. As for their children, I also have read in the underground that none of them, they're not hers.
Prefer not to be drawn on the issue of Meghan's pregnancies, which could also, for shorthand, be called Megnancies. I do not think anything but a well-considered book, legal for libel, would be a suitable platform for discussing the intricacies of Meghan's Megnancies and Meghan's stabs at motherhood.
He admitted to taking drugs in his book Spare.
Yes.
Will this have a bad outcome in, say, his ability to stay in America?
Well, of course, the Heritage Foundation has been going hell for leather. But I have always been of the view that irrespective of whether it's a Democrat or a Republican government in power, there is such a thing as the courtesy of one ally for another. And I would be very surprised if at the end of the day, Harry suffers any penalties, irrespective of whether he lied on his application or not. But will Harry be penalized? Will he be prevented from going back to the United States of America? I wouldn't hold my breath and wait. Having said that, maybe Meghan would love it.
Oh, and don't you think we should just end it there? Because it's so joyful.
Shall we?
Yes. And thank you very much for a glorious afternoon.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, absolutely. As you can see, it's an amazing house.